Life has a peculiar way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. That's how I met Marco. My name is Cora, and at 28, I was working as a fitness trainer at a local gym, living a life as structured and disciplined as my workout routines. Then one day, Marco walked in, looking for a quick session, and ended up changing the entire course of my life. "Hey, I'm Marco," he said, flashing a smile that could light up the darkest corners. "Heard this is the best place to get in shape. Mind showing me the ropes?" I raised an eyebrow, sizing him up. He didn't exactly fit the mold of the usual gym goer, more like someone who spent his days charming his way through life. "Sure, Marco. Follow my lead, and you'll be in shape in no time. But I warn you, I don't go easy on anyone." He chuckled, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Wouldn't have it any other way. Lead on, Cora." Training Marco was like trying to tame a wild stallion. He had energy for days and a stubborn streak to match. But beneath the jokes and playful banter, there was a genuine connection neither of us could deny. As days turned into weeks, our gym sessions became the highlight of my life. It wasn't just about the workouts anymore. It was about the laughter, the stories, and the moments we shared. One evening, as we wrapped up, Marco turned to me, his usual grin replaced by a serious look. "Cora, I need to tell you something. I'm not just here for the workouts. I'm here for you. You have this fire, this strength I've never seen in anyone else, and I'm crazy about you." I was taken aback. This was Marco, the guy who joked about everything, now stating in front of me, bare and honest. "Marco, I don't know what to say. You're not what I expected, but I can't deny there's something between us. Something real." That was the start of our whirlwind romance, intense and passionate, like a storm that swept everything in its path. Before I knew it, I was saying "I do" to the man who had walked into my gym and turned my world upside down. But the fairy tale didn't last long. After the wedding, Marco dropped a bombshell that would set the stage for the battles to come. "Cora, we need to move into my mother's house. Family is everything to me, and I need to be there for them." My stomach dropped. Maria, his mother, was a force to be reckoned with, sharp-tongued and critical, a stark contrast to Marco's warmth. And then there was Sofia, his sister, a mirror image of her mother's arrogance and disdain. "Marco, are you sure about this? Our relationship with your mother and Sofia is strained, to put it mildly. Is this really the best idea?" I asked, trying to keep the worry out of my voice. He took my hands in his gaze earnest. "I know it's not ideal, but family means everything to me. We'll make it work. I promise. It's me and our little family against the world." Moving into Marco's family home felt like stepping onto a battlefield. Every day was a struggle under Maria's strict rules. "Don't forget the dishes need doing, and the living room needs a good dusting. We run a tight ship here," she would say, her voice dripping with anything but warmth. I would nod, biting back the retorts that threatened to spill. "Of course, Maria. I wouldn't want the house to be anything less than perfect." Sofia would smirk from her perch at the kitchen table, her eyes scanning me like I was some bug under a microscope. "Yeah, Cora, and try to keep up, will you? We don't need any dead weight around here." The days felt long, the work unending. It was like living in a loop, each day a repeat of the last. Cleaning, cooking, trying to find my footing in a house that felt like a minefield. Marco was there, but not really. His restaurant was his world, and I felt like a ghost in his family home. Then, life threw me another curveball. I was pregnant. The news should have been a beacon of joy, but in Maria's house, it was just another ripple in already troubled waters. "Pregnant, huh?" Maria's voice was flat, her eyes hard. "Well, don't expect any special treatment. This house doesn't run itself, you know." I placed my hand instinctively on my belly. "I don't expect special treatment, Maria, but I do expect some understanding. I'm carrying a child, your grandchild." That shut her up, if only for a moment. But the chores piled up and the glares grew sharper, making the house feel smaller each day. Sophia was no help, watching my struggles with a satisfied smirk. "You're slowing down, Cora," she would taunt. "Can't handle a bit of housework. What kind of mother are you going to be?" I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I held it in for Marco, for the tiny heartbeat grew stronger each day. The tension was a constant companion, an unwelcome guest at every meal and every moment. "Marco, please talk to them," I pleaded one night, the weight of the day heavy on my shoulders. "Your mother and Sofia treat me like I'm nothing, like I don't belong." He sighed, a tired sound that spoke volumes. "Cora, they're just set in their ways. It's how they've always been. Just give it time. It'll get better. But it didn't get better, it got harder. The house became more suffocating, Maria and Sofia more relentless. I was just trying to keep my head above water and protect the tiny life that depended on me. Each night, as I lay in bed, the moon casting shadows across the room, I felt the weight of my reality pressing down, heavier than ever. I made a silent vow. I wouldn't let them break me. Their disdain and sharp words wouldn't define me. I was stronger than they realized, and one day they'd see, this house, this battlefield, would be mine to conquer. Becoming a mother was supposed to be the most beautiful chapter of my life, but in Maria's house, it felt more like a trial by fire. Luca was my little bundle of joy, my ray of sunshine amid the storm. Yet every coo and every cry was met with relentless pressure and criticism from Maria and Sofia. Really, Cora, can't you keep that child quiet? Maria snapped, her tone sharp as knives, every time Luca whimpered. I held him closer, whispering words of comfort, trying to shield him from his grandmother's harshness. He's just a baby, Maria. Babies cry. That's how they communicate. Sofia rolled her eyes, her voice dripping with disdain. Oh, please. You're just not doing it right, Cora. Maybe if you paid more attention to him instead of feeling sorry for yourself, he'd be quieter. Their words stung, each one a reminder of how out of place I felt in this house and this family. It wasn't just the verbal jabs, it was the scrutinizing looks, especially after my body had changed during pregnancy. The weight I'd gained became a favorite topic of ridicule. Looks like those fitness trainer days are long gone, huh, Cora? Maria would chuckle, her smirk infuriating. Better lay off the sweets if you want to fit into your old clothes again. I clenched my fists, forcing a smile to hide my hurt. I'm proud of my body, Maria. It brought Luca into this world. The weight is temporary, but the love I have for my son is forever. But my defiance fell on deaf ears. I was the outsider, the intruder in their perfect little world. And no matter how hard I tried, it never seemed to be enough. Enough was enough. The constant belittling from Maria and Sofia wasn't just chipping away at my spirit. It was igniting a fire within me, a fire to reclaim my life, my body, and my self-respect. I decided to take control right there in the suffocating walls of that house. I started small, turning the corner of my room into a personal gym. It wasn't much, just a mat, some weights, and a determination as strong as steel. This is it, Luca, I whispered, cradling him in one arm while setting up my phone to record. Mommy's turning it all around, starting now. The first few days were tough. The exercises left me breathless, my muscles screaming in protest. But each drop of sweat and every aching limb felt like a triumph. You think you can just bounce back, Cora? Maria sneered one day, watching me pant through my routine. It's not that easy, you know. Takes more than a few stretches to fix what's broken. I wiped my brow, fixing her with a steely gaze. Watch me, Maria. I'm not just fixing what's broken. I'm building something stronger. I don't need your approval or your snide comments. That's when I decided to go public with my journey. I started a YouTube channel and an Instagram page sharing every struggle and every victory. It was raw and real, and to my surprise, it resonated with so many out there. Look at this, Luca. I'd say, showing him the screen filled with comments and likes. We're not alone. There are so many rooting for us. Then came the offers from advertisers, turning my little corner of the internet into a thriving source of income. I was stunned and overwhelmed. But above all, I felt empowered. Can you believe this, Luca? I whispered, tucking him into bed. We're doing it. We're really doing it. But with every success, the tension in the house grew thicker. Maria and Sofia couldn't stand it, the way I turned their ridicule into armor, their disdain into a driving force. What's this now, Cora? Playing the star while the rest of us do the real work? Sofia spat one day, her eyes filled with venom. I stood my ground, Luca on my hip, my heart stronger than ever. It's called turning the tide, Sofia. It's called taking back control. And if that bothers you, well, that's your problem, not mine. What once felt like a prison was now just a backdrop. My world was larger, brighter, filled with the love of my son and the support of a community that saw me for who I truly was. The success of my online channels was a sweet victory, but it brought a new kind of challenge. Marco was stunned by the numbers, the comments, the sheer scale of it all. But his pride was bruised. He didn't want the world, especially his family, to see the shift in our roles. Cora, this is incredible, he said one evening, his eyes pleading. But you know how my mother and Sofia are. Please, let's keep this between us. I don't want them thinking I'm not the provider. I sighed, the weight of his request heavy on my shoulders. Marco, I'm proud of what I've achieved. It's not just about the money, it's about respect, about independence. He nodded, reaching for my hand. I know, and I respect that. But in this house, it's complicated. Let's just keep it our little secret for now. Reluctantly, I agreed and began transferring $4,000 a month to Marco's account. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. Maria and Sofia continued their tirade, oblivious to the truth. They saw me as a leech, living off their precious son and brother. You're just a freeloader, Cora, always taking and never contributing, Maria snarled, her words as sharp as ever. I held back my retort, using my silent shield against her barbs. I contribute in my own way, Maria, not that you'd ever acknowledge it. Sofia was no better. What do you even do all day, Cora? Lounge around while we do all the real work. Their ignorance was a bitter pill to swallow, but I swallowed it anyway. My focus was on Luca, my channels, my newfound strength. I'd walk with my son in the park, my camera constant companion, capturing moments, workouts, and the real me that they refused to see. Cora, you're wasting your time with those videos, Maria scoffed, watching me edit my latest post. But the numbers told a different story. The subscribers, the views, the comments. They were real, tangible, and they were mine. Maybe to you, Maria, but to me and to thousands out there, it's anything but a waste, I replied, my confidence unwavering. Marco's restaurant troubles added another layer to her already complicated life. One day, he approached me, his pride barely holding back his desperation. Cora, the restaurant is struggling. I need help. Could you? Would you lend me some money just to tide things over? His vulnerability was a rare sight, tugging at my heartstrings. Of course, Marco, I'll help. But this isn't just a loan. It's an investment in us, in our family. His relief was palpable, but it was tinged with an unspoken truth. I was the lifeline, the silent savior of the family facade. As I transferred $10,000, I watched the gratitude and guilt flicker in his eyes. I sensed the balance had shifted. Time in that house felt like a ticking bomb, with each day bringing us closer to an explosion. Sofia's marriage introduced her husband, Rick, into our already cramped space, and his presence only heightened the chaos and tension that had become a constant in our lives. You two just take up space, Maria sneered, her words slicing through the crowded living room. You're nothing but freeloaders, Cora. You and that kid. I clenched my teeth, hugging Luca closer. We're family, Maria, or at least that's what a house like this is supposed to mean. But when Sofia announced her pregnancy, Maria's attitude shifted to something even harsher and more direct. This house is getting crowded, Cora, and frankly, you and your boy are just in the way. The words stung, but before I could muster a response, Marco dropped a bombshell of his own at dinner. I have to go out of town for a few weeks. Restaurant business, he said, avoiding my gaze. A few weeks in this madhouse without the slightest buffer Marco provided felt like a sentence I couldn't bear. You're leaving now? With everything going on? I asked, my voice barely a whisper over the lump in my throat. He didn't meet my eyes. I have to, Cora. It's important. And just like that, he was gone. The door shut behind him, and the weight of his absence settled over the house like a thick fog. I tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy for Luca. We went for walks, did our workouts in the park, anything to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the house. But when we returned from kindergarten one day, the sight that greeted us froze me in my tracks. Our belongings, bags, suitcases, Luca's toys, were piled outside the front door like trash. Mommy, what's happening? Luca's small voice trembled with confusion and fear. I swallowed hard, fighting back tears as I approached the door. Maria, Sofia. What is this? Why are things outside? I demanded, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. The response came cold and merciless from the other side of the door. You heard me, Cora. The house is too crowded, and you two are just taking up space. It's time for you to leave and find somewhere else to call home. Maria's voice was like a knife, and Sofia's echoing laughter twisted it deeper. I stood there, my whole world collapsing around me. What should I tell Marco? What would I say to my son when he asked where his father, his home, had gone? Their laughter was the only answer, a cruel reminder that we were expendable. An inconvenience easily discarded. With a heavy heart and a mind swirling with shock and betrayal, I gathered our belongings. Holding Luca's hand tightly, I stepped away from the house that was never a home. The pain was sharp, the betrayal bitter, but it was the clarity of the moment that struck me most. This was the end of one chapter, a chapter of struggle and pain, but it was also the beginning of something new, something ours. I rented an apartment, a small but safe haven for Luca and me. As I unpacked our lives, the reality of what had happened and what I had escaped began to sink in. I was alone, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope, a sense of freedom. Settling into the new apartment was a bittersweet experience. It was a sanctuary where the shadows of Maria's house couldn't reach us. I meticulously arranged our belongings, trying to make the space feel like home when my phone buzzed with a message that sent shockwaves through my world. It was from Sophia, her message laced with sickening glee. "You think you know Marco? Think again, Cora." Attached was a link, a portal to a truth I had never imagined. Trembling, I clicked it, my heart racing. I clicked the link, and my world fractured as the screen lit up with images that shattered my reality. There was Marco, not mired in restaurant troubles but tangled in the arms of another woman. Their intimacy was unmistakable, the photos standing in stark contrast to the lies he had spun for me. The most recent shots were dated just yesterday. The business trip, the stress, everything had been a cruel facade, and I was the unwitting financier of his double life. A numbing cold washed over me, the pain and betrayal intertwining into a fierce resolve. For years I had been the backbone, the silent supporter of a man who lived in shadows while his family treated me like dirt. A week of emotional turmoil was punctuated by incessant calls from Marco, whose voice had once been a source of comfort but was now a trigger for my contempt. "Cora, please, you need to come back. Mom and Sophia crossed the line, and the restaurant is in shambles. I need you. The bills are piling up." His pleas, once capable of tugging at my heartstrings, now ignited nothing but disdain. "So you only need me to pay your bills and your family's bills?" His voice cracked, desperation seeping through. "We're still a family, you, me, Luca. Isn't that worth fighting for?" A bitter laugh escaped me. "A family? Is that what you call this charade? No, Marco, we're far from a family. And as for your restaurant, your debts are yours to deal with." Silence fell heavily between us, almost tangible. I could feel the weight of his predicament pressing down on him. "But Cora, the money?" "Your problem, Marco. Your restaurant, your money. I'm done being your lifeline." I cut in, my voice unwavering. "However, we will discuss this tomorrow. I will come to your mother's house." I made my decision. I returned to that house, not as the broken woman they expected, but as the force they never saw coming. Armed with the truth and a plan that would turn their world upside down, I stepped into the lion's den. Marco's face lit up with a mix of hope and surprise, but Maria and Sophia's expressions were cold and calculating. They clearly weren't thrilled about my return. "Look who's back," Maria said, her tone dripping with disdain. "Missed us, have you?" I met her gaze without flinching. "Not at all, Maria. I'm here for something important." I handed Marco an envelope. His face drained of color as he recognized it for what it was: divorce papers. "Marco," I stated, relishing the taste of freedom, "our marriage ends here." Maria and Sophia's initial shock quickly morphed into smiles. "Finally getting rid of the dead weight, and Marco?" Sophia jeered, her laughter grating on my nerves. But their joy was premature. "Don't get too excited," I interjected sharply. "You might want to sit down for this. It's been me, not Marco, keeping this household afloat." The room fell silent, stunned. Marco's eyes darted between me and his family as the truth hung in the air. "It's true," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "The restaurant's been failing. Cora's been covering everything. She transferred $4,000 to me every month." Maria and Sophia turned on him, their faces twisted with anger and disbelief. "You lied to us. You let her pay our bills." Maria's voice was shrill. "What should we do now without her money?" "I'm going to file for alimony," Marco said, desperation clear in his tone. "I earn less, so it's only fair." His mother and sister delighted in this revelation, clapping their hands as if they were celebrating a victory. Their hollow applause echoed in the room, but I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. "You think that's going to work, Marco? You won't get a cent from me, especially not after I found out about your affair." The color drained from his face. "How did you?" he stammered, his bravado crumbling. I pointedly looked at Sophia. "Your sister was kind enough to send me all the proof I needed." What erupted next was chaos, accusations flying as betrayals were laid bare. Marco and Sofia shouted at each other, arms flailing amid the frenzy. But I remained calm, my next move crystal clear. "I'm taking back what's mine," I declared, my voice cutting through the noise. "Every appliance, every piece of furniture I paid for. You're left with what you've earned, which is nothing." And that's exactly what I did. I stripped the house of every trace of my financial support, leaving them to face the consequences of their actions. Their pleas for mercy and forgiveness fell on deaf ears as I blocked their numbers, severing the last ties to a life of deceit and disrespect. The fallout was swift. Marco's restaurant crumbled under the weight of debt. The house was lost, and Sofia's husband walked away from the wreckage of their family. They were left with nothing but each other and the mistakes they had made crammed into a rented apartment. As for Luca and me, we flourished in our new life. Our days were filled with love, laughter, and the peace we had fought so hard to find. The past was behind us, a distant memory overshadowed by the bright future we were building together. We were more than survivors. We were conquerors, and our story was just beginning.